When I collapsed, my triplet sons accidentally dialed the billionaire mother who told the world they died at birth. Now she's running for office. Your father told me they died. The words hung in the sterile hospital air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Fallon Cassidy, billionaire gubernatorial candidate, sat beside the bed of the man she hadn't seen in 10 years, her perfectly manicured hands trembling as they gripped his. He told me you were dead. All 3 of you. When I woke up after the delivery, he said there were complications and none of them survived. Holden Rivers stared at her from his hospital bed, tubes and wires, connecting him to machines that beeped with his irregular heartbeat. His voice came out rough, broken. Your father told me you wanted nothing to do with us, that you chose your company over our family, that you didn't want children ruining your career trajectory. Fallon's breath hitched, and for the first time in a decade, the mask of composed power she wore cracked completely. I wanted them. God, Holden, I wanted you. All of you. I've spent 10 years believing our children were dead. 10 years mourning them. And they've been alive this entire time? The heart monitor started beeping faster. Holden's eyes filled with tears and rage, and something that looked like devastated understanding. He told me you signed away all parental rights, that you were unconscious for 2 days, and when you woke up you made it clear you wanted nothing to do with 3 premature babies or the elementary school teacher who got you pregnant. We were both lied to, by the same man, for 10 years. The machine started alarming. A nurse rushed in, checking vitals, ordering them both to calm down or leave. But neither of them could move. They sat there, 2 people who had loved each other desperately, staring at the ruins of what one manipulative man had destroyed. In a waiting room down the hall, 3 10-year-old boys sat watching strangers whisper about them, completely unaware that their entire lives, everything they believed about why their mother didn't want them, was built on a lie that was about to explode across every news channel in America. Have you ever discovered that your entire life was based on a deception so massive it destroyed a family before it could even begin? Have you ever been told someone you loved was dead, only to find out 10 years later they've been alive all along, growing up without you, believing you abandoned them? This is the story of a woman who became powerful enough to run a state, but lost the only power that mattered, the power to know her own children. This is the story of a man who raised triplets alone, working double shifts and sacrificing everything, believing the woman he loved had thrown them all away like garbage. And this is the story of 3 boys who made one desperate phone call that would shatter a political campaign, expose a decade of lies, and force everyone to answer one impossible question. Can you forgive someone for abandoning you if they never actually did it? Or does 10 years of absence, even built on deception, matter more than the truth? Before we dive into how this all unraveled, let me ask you something. If you found out right now that someone you mourned for years was actually alive, what would you do? Would you run to them? Would you rage at the person who lied? Would you break down completely? Drop a like if you believe the truth always comes out eventually, and comment below telling me whether you think a parent and child can rebuild a relationship after 10 years of believing lies. Because I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll have a very different perspective on forgiveness, family, and the lies we tell ourselves to survive grief. Now let me take you back to where this impossible story began. Not 10 years ago when the lies started, but 2 days ago, when everything came crashing down in the most unexpected way possible. Saturday morning, Seattle, the Greenwood neighborhood. Holden Rivers stood at the stove in his small but tidy apartment, flipping pancakes while his 3 sons argued with the passionate intensity only 10-year-olds can muster over something completely trivial. Dad, it's my turn to pick the movie. Phoenix, the smallest of the triplets by 4 minutes and several pounds, stood with his arms crossed, in a posture that would have been intimidating if he wasn't barely 4.5 feet tall. You picked last week. Beckett, the natural leader, the one with their mother's analytical mind and their father's stubborn streak, shook his head firmly. That was 3 weeks ago. You just don't remember because you never pay attention. Sawyer, the peacemaker, sat at the kitchen table trying to stay out of it but inevitably getting pulled in. Holden smiled despite the headache building behind his eyes. He'd been tired lately, more than tired, exhausted in a way that sleep didn't fix. His chest had been tight all week, and twice he'd had to sit down during his 4th grade lessons because the room started spinning. But he was a single father of triplets. Tired was his natural state. He'd been operating on exhaustion for 10 years. This was just another week. How about we do something crazy and watch something none of you have picked before? Something new? All three boys turned to him with identical expressions of horror. In their world, changing routine was equivalent to disaster. Dad, no. The routine is Phoenix, then Beckett, then me. We've been doing this since we were 6. Sawyer's voice carried the kind of logic that was hard to argue with. Holden laughed, reaching for the spatula to flip another pancake. And that's when the world tilted sideways. The kitchen floor rushed up to meet him, or he rushed down to meet it. He couldn't tell which. All he knew was that his knees buckled, his chest compressed like someone had wrapped steel bands around his ribcage, and was tightening them slowly, and his vision tunneled into a small point of light surrounded by darkness. Dad? The voice sounded far away. Under water. Distorted. Holden tried to speak, tried to tell his sons to call 911. Tried to stay conscious long enough to make sure they were safe, but his heart was beating wrong. Too fast and then too slow, and then in a rhythm that felt like it was skipping beats entirely. Dad, what's wrong? Dad! That was Beckett. Always Beckett when there was a crisis. The one who took charge. Something's wrong with Dad. Phoenix, call 911. Sawyer, get the neighbor. Holden heard movement. Footsteps. Someone crying. The smoke alarm started going off because the pancakes were burning. His vision was fading in and out. He could see the ceiling, then darkness, then the ceiling again. His last coherent thought was terrifyingly practical. The life insurance policy lapsed last month. If he died, his sons would have nothing. No money, no family. Their mother's family had made it abundantly clear that Holden and his children were not welcome, not wanted, not acknowledged. These boys would be alone. Wait, Phoenix's voice, shaky and uncertain. There's a number. In Dad's box. The one in his closet. The one with her stuff. Holden wanted to scream no. That box was supposed to stay hidden. Those were private things from a past life. A different version of himself who'd believed. In love and partnership and futures that included more than just survival. Beckett, we need to call 911 now, not look through Dad's stuff. But what if the number is important? What if it's family? We don't have family. Dad told us that. It's just us. Phoenix was already moving. Holden heard his closet door open, heard the sound of the box being pulled out. That box contained photographs, letters he'd never sent, a business card, with her private number that he'd kept for a decade without knowing why. I found it. A phone number. It says Fallon, emergency only. Who's Fallon? I don't know, but Dad kept it. In the emergency box. Maybe we should call it. Phoenix, call 911 first. But Holden was fading. The conversation was getting more distant. He was aware of movement, of voices, of his son's fear radiating through the small apartment like heat. And then he heard it. Phoenix's voice, trembling, speaking into a phone. Mom? Mom, I don't know if this number still works, but Dad collapsed, and we don't know what to do, and we're only 10. And Beckett says we should call 911, but Sawyer found this number in Dad's old box, and we thought maybe you should know, and please, please, we need help. The message cut off. The last thing Holden heard before darkness took him completely was the sound of sirens in the distance, getting closer. Across the city, in a campaign headquarters that occupied the entire 20th floor of the Cassidy Tower, Fallon Cassidy stood at, floor-to-ceiling windows reviewing debate notes while her chief of staff ran through the day's schedule with military precision. Photo op at the Children's Hospital at 2, Education Reform Roundtable at 4, CNN interview at 7. They'll definitely ask about the family question again. Penelope Hart, 35 years old and fiercely protective of her boss, didn't look up from her tablet. The family question. It always came back to that. How can you understand families when you've never had one? How can you advocate for children when you chose not to have any? How can you represent working mothers when you prioritized career over motherhood? Fallon had perfected her answer over the years. Practiced it until it sounded genuine instead of like the carefully constructed political response it actually was. I lost children early in life. That grief shaped my commitment to making sure every child in this state has access to the resources they need to thrive. True enough. The public didn't need to know that lost meant believe they died at birth. They didn't need to know about the sterile clinic in Switzerland, the delivery she barely remembered. Waking up to her father's voice telling her that all 3 babies had died due to complications. They didn't need to know that she'd spent 10 years building an empire, on top of a grief so profound it had calcified into ambition. that every achievement, every success, every step toward power was her trying to make their deaths mean something. Miss Cassidy? Theodore Vance, her campaign manager, appeared in the doorway. His usually composed face showed cracks of confusion and concern. What is it, Theodore? I have the hospital event in 90 minutes. I need to review the talking points. We have a situation. Fallon turned from the window, her political instincts immediately activating. Situation was campaign speak for problem. What kind of situation? A phone call. On your private line. The one only family has. Her father was dead. Had been for 2 years. The cancer had taken him slowly, painfully, and he'd gone to his grave without ever admitting weakness or expressing regret for anything he'd done in his 73 years of ruthless existence. There is no family, Theodore. My father's gone. That's what I thought. But there's a voicemail. You need to hear it. Theodore's hand shook slightly as he held out her phone. Fallon took it, something cold and sharp twisting in her gut as she pressed play. The voice was young, male, terrified. Mom? Mom, I don't know if this number still works, but Dad collapsed and we don't know what to do and we're only 10, and Beckett says we should. Call 911, but Sawyer found this number in Dad's old box and we thought maybe you should know and please, we need help. The message ended abruptly. Fallon stared at the phone. Her hand was shaking. No, her whole body was shaking. The room was spinning and she couldn't breathe, and that couldn't be what she thought it was because her children were dead. They'd been dead for 10 years. She'd mourned them. She'd built her entire life around their absence. Miss Cassidy? Penelope moved closer, concern etched across her face. What's wrong? Who was that? Fallon played the message again, listening for details she'd missed the first time. The voice, young, but not too young. 10, he'd said. Exactly the right age. And there were other voices in the background. Multiple voices. 3 of them maybe. And names. Beckett, Sawyer, and the one calling must be the 3rd. I need you to trace this number. Right now. Fallon's voice came out steady despite the chaos in her chest. Theodore was already on it, his fingers flying across his phone. Give me 2 minutes. Those 2 minutes felt like hours. Fallon stood frozen, her mind racing through impossible calculations. Her children had died 10 years ago. Her father had told her so. The doctors had confirmed it. She'd been unconscious for 2 days after the delivery, and when she woke up, everyone had the same story. Complications, premature birth, 3 babies too fragile to survive. But she'd never seen bodies, never had a funeral. Her father had handled everything while she was sedated with grief and medical necessity. He'd told her it was better this way, cleaner, less traumatic. What if he'd lied? What if the man who'd spent her entire life controlling every aspect of her existence, who'd threatened to destroy Holden's career if she didn't, had give up the babies, who'd valued legacy and power over love and connection? What if he'd lied about the most important thing in her life? Got it. Theodore looked up from his phone, his expression grave. The call came from an apartment in the Greenwood neighborhood, registered to a Holden Rivers. Fallon's knees almost gave out. She grabbed the edge of her desk to steady herself. Holden. The elementary school teacher she'd fallen in love with at a volunteer event. The man who made her laugh, who saw her as a person instead of a dynasty, who'd wanted to build a life with her that had nothing to do with boardrooms and billion-dollar valuations. The man her father had convinced her was only interested in her money. The man she'd been told wanted nothing to do with premature triplets and the complications of single fatherhood. The man who'd supposedly walked away without a backward glance. I need his address. Now. Miss Cassidy, you have the children's hospital event in less than 90 minutes. We need to leave in 30 minutes if you're going to make it. Cancel it. What? Cancel everything. Fallon was already grabbing her coat, her car keys, her phone. Cancel the hospital, cancel the round table, cancel the CNN interview, cancel it all. Fallon, you can't just cancel a day of campaign events. The optics alone. My children are alive. The words came out like a confession and an accusation all at once. My children, who I was told died 10 years ago, just called me because their father collapsed. I don't give a damn about optics right now, Theodore. I need an address. Penelope and Theodore exchanged glances. The kind of look that said their candidate was having a breakdown and they needed to manage it carefully. Miss Cassidy, I think you should sit down. You're not making sense. Your children are alive, have been alive, for 10 years. Fallon's voice rose. A child just called me Mom. 3 children's voices in the background, all the right age. Holden Rivers, the man I was pregnant with when my father sent me to Switzerland. This isn't a breakdown, Penelope. This is the truth finally coming out. She pulled up the voicemail again, put it on speaker so they could both hear it. The young voice, the desperation, the background chaos of other children and someone in distress. When it ended, both of her staffers stood in stunned silence. If this is real, Theodore said slowly, if your children have been alive this whole time and you didn't know, this is the biggest story of the campaign, possibly the biggest story of the decade. I don't care about the story. I care about 3 children who just lost their father to a medical emergency and called a mother they've never met. You don't know that they've never met you. You don't know anything yet. This could be a scam, a political hit job, someone trying to derail your campaign with an elaborate, "Give me the goddamn address, Theodore." He did. Fallon was out the door before either of them could form another objection. The drive to Greenwood took 17 minutes. 17 minutes of Fallon's hands shaking on the steering wheel. 17 minutes of memories flooding back with such force she could barely see the road. Meeting Holden at an elementary school volunteer event. She'd been there for a photo op. Good press for the VP of Cassidy Global to show she cared about education. He'd been there because he actually did care, because he taught 4th grade and believed in the power of books and patience and seeing children as complete humans. He'd made a joke about her designer shoes being impractical for the playground. She'd laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. They'd gone for coffee after, then dinner, then months of sneaking around because her father had made it abundantly clear that elementary school teachers were not appropriate partners for Cassidy heirs. Finding out she was pregnant. 3 babies. Triplets. The ultrasound tech's surprise. Holden's pure, uncomplicated joy. His immediate assumption that they'd figure it out together, that love was enough. Her father's rage. The ultimatum delivered in his corner office with views of the entire city. Choose the company or choose them. Choose your future or choose a man who makes $40,000 a year and 3 babies who will derail everything we've built. The threats against Holden's teaching license, against his reputation. Her father had the power to make sure Holden never worked in education again, and they both knew it. Her capitulation, the agreement to go to Switzerland, to have the babies privately, to give them up for adoption to a good family, to come back and take her place as her father's successor. The last conversation with Holden. Her father had arranged it, a final meeting to get closure. Holden had begged her to reconsider. She'd said no because she believed her father's lies that Holden only wanted money, only wanted to trap her, only wanted to use their children as leverage. She'd said no, and then she'd lost everything anyway. Or so she'd thought. The apartment building was modest, well-maintained but clearly not expensive. Nothing like the penthouse she lived in, the one with more square footage than most. People's houses and a price tag that could fund a small school district for a year. Fallon parked illegally and didn't care. She ran to the entrance, found apartment 4C, and knocked with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. The door opened. A child stood there, 10 years old, dark curly hair, serious brown eyes, a dusting of freckles across his nose that was exactly like Holden's. Those eyes widened in recognition of something, though the boy couldn't possibly know who she was. "You came," he whispered. Behind him, 2 other boys appeared, identical, triplets, her triplets, 10 years old and alive and staring at her like she was a ghost. Fallon couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare at 3 faces that were composites of her and Holden. 3 children, who'd grown up without her, 3 impossible miracles standing in a doorway. "Are you our mom?" one of them asked. The tallest one, the one who'd opened the door. "Are you our real mom?" The question shattered something in Fallon's chest. She wanted to say yes, wanted to gather them into her arms and never let go, wanted to scream at the universe for stealing 10 years from all of them. Instead, she managed a single word. Yes. The boys stared at her, evaluating, comparing her to whatever image they'd built in their heads of the mother who hadn't wanted them. The ambulance came. The smallest one spoke now. His voice was the one from the voicemail. They took Dad to Swedish Medical Center. His heart stopped working right. "Is he going to die?" another one asked. Tears were streaming down his face. "We can't lose Dad. He's all we have. He's all we have." The words hit Fallon like a physical blow. These children, her children, believed their father was all they had because she'd never been there, because they'd grown up thinking she'd chosen boardrooms over them. "He's not all you have." The words came out fierce, determined, breaking. "Not anymore. Show me which hospital." The boys grabbed jackets, shoes, a backpack one of them insisted on bringing. They moved with the efficiency of children who'd learned to handle crisis, who'd probably had to handle crisis before. As they walked to her car, the tallest one, the leader, spoke quietly. "Dad told us you didn't want us, that you chose your job instead. Is that true?" Fallon stopped walking, knelt down so she was at eye level with 3 children she'd never met but would die for. "No, that's not true. I was told you died. All 3 of you. I've spent 10 years believing I lost you, and I just found out 20 minutes ago that you've been alive this whole time." The boys looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that siblings who've been through trauma together can have without words. Someone lied. The middle one spoke with careful logic. "Either to you or to Dad. Or to both of you. I think to both of us. Why would someone do that?" Fallon looked at their faces. So young. Too young to understand the kind of cruelty that prioritizes control over love. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Right now, we need to get to your dad. Okay?" They nodded, climbed into her car, put on seatbelts without being asked. During the drive to Swedish Medical Center, Fallon learned their names. "I'm Beckett, the leader, the one who'd opened the door. I'm Sawyer, the logical one, the one who'd questioned the lies. I'm Phoenix, the emotional one, the one who'd made the call that changed everything." "Those are strong names," Fallon managed. "Did your dad name you? He said you picked the names together before." Phoenix's voice was soft. "He has a list. We found it once. In that box." Fallon's heart clenched. She had picked those names during the pregnancy, lying in bed with Holden, imagining what their children would be like, choosing names that felt meaningful. Beckett for Holden's grandfather who'd raised him. Sawyer for her mother who'd died when she was 8. Phoenix for both of them, for the idea of rising from ashes, of new beginnings. "He kept the names," she whispered. "He kept everything." Sawyer said it matter-of-factly. "Photos, letters, stuff from when you were together. He thought we didn't know about the box, but we did. Why didn't he throw it away?" Beckett's question sounded genuinely curious. "If you abandoned us, why keep your stuff?" "Because I didn't abandon you." And somewhere, he must have known something wasn't right about what he was told. They arrived at the hospital. Swedish Medical Center. Cardiac ICU. Fallon walked in with 3 children beside her, and every nurse and administrator who saw them did a double take. The resemblance was unmistakable. These were clearly her sons. "I need to see Holden Rivers. He was brought in by ambulance approximately an hour ago. Cardiac emergency." "Are you family?" "I'm..." Fallon hesitated. What was she? "I'm the mother of his children." The nurse's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "He's in critical care. Stable but serious. The doctor will want to speak with you. Can we see him?" "Soon. He's still being evaluated." They were directed to a waiting room. Fallon sat with 3 boys who were strangers, and also the most important people in her world. They were quiet, scared, looking to her for reassurance she didn't know how to provide. "Tell me about him. About your dad. What's he like?" Beckett spoke first. "He's the best. He teaches 4th grade. He helps kids who are struggling and never makes them feel dumb. He makes really good pancakes," Phoenix added. "Every Saturday morning. It's our tradition. He works really hard." Sawyer's voice was careful. "Sometimes too hard. He gets tired a lot." Fallon felt guilt wash over her. While she'd been building empires and running for governor, Holden had been raising their children alone. Working. Exhausted. Probably struggling financially on a teacher's salary. Does he have help? Family nearby? "Just us. We're his family." Beckett said it with simple finality. Before Fallon could respond, her phone rang. "Penelope, where are you? The press somehow got wind that you canceled all your events and went to Greenwood. There are reporters asking questions, digging into Holden Rivers' background, and..." "Tell them nothing. Fallon, you need to get ahead of this. If this story breaks without your control, I don't care about control right now, Penelope. I care about 3 children and their father. Miss Cassidy, Penelope's voice dropped. I need you to think clearly. If what you're saying is true, if you have children you didn't know about, this is the biggest story of the election. Possibly the biggest story of your life. How you handle the next few hours will determine everything. Then I'll handle it by being here. With them. Where I should have been for the last 10 years. She hung up. An hour passed. Then another. Doctors came and went. Finally, a cardiologist approached them. Mrs. Rivers? Fallon didn't correct the assumption. Yes? Your husband is stable. He suffered from stress-induced cardiomyopathy. Essentially, his heart muscle weakened due to extreme and prolonged stress. It's serious, but with proper care and significant lifestyle changes, his prognosis is good. Can we see him? He's awake and asking for his sons. You can go in, but keep it brief and calm. His heart can't handle additional stress right now. The boys stood immediately. Fallon followed them through sterile hallways to a private room where Holden Rivers lay connected to machines and monitors. He looked older than she remembered. Stress lines around his eyes, silver threading through his dark hair. But his eyes were the same, kind and tired and widening in absolute shock when he saw her. Dad! The boys rushed to his bedside. Hey guys. Holden's voice was rough but warm. I'm okay. Don't worry. Then his eyes found Fallon's, and the machines monitoring his heart started beeping faster. This is a really vivid hallucination, he mumbled. The drugs must be excellent. You're not hallucinating. Fallon moved closer, her voice breaking on the words. Phoenix called me. I came as fast as I could. Phoenix called you? How did he? The box in your closet. The emergency number. Holden closed his eyes. That number hasn't worked in 10 years. I never changed it. The boys looked between their parents, sensing currents of emotion they couldn't fully understand. Can we talk? Alone? Fallon asked quietly. Holden nodded. The boys were ushered out by a kind nurse who promised them snacks and a view of the helicopter landing pad. When they were alone, Fallon moved to his bedside, sat in the chair that was meant for family. Your father told me they died. The words spilled out. When I woke up after the delivery, he told me there were complications, that none of them survived. I believed him, Holden. I had no reason not to. And I've spent 10 years believing our children were dead. Holden stared at her, really looked at her, searching for the lie, for the political spin, for any sign this was manipulation. He found only raw, devastating truth. Your father told me you didn't want them, that you'd signed away all parental rights while I was in the waiting room, that you were unconscious for 2 days, and when you woke up, you made it clear you wanted nothing to do with 3 premature babies or the man who got you pregnant. I never signed anything. I was unconscious for 2 days, yes, but when I woke up, my father told me they were dead. The heart monitor was beeping erratically now. Holden's breath came faster. He lied to both of us. About everything. For 10 years. The machines started alarming. A nurse rushed in, checking vitals, her expression stern. You both need to calm down or leave. Mr. Rivers' heart can't handle this level of stress right now. But neither of them could calm down. They stared at each other across the hospital bed, across 10 years of separate grief, across the wreckage of what Richard Cassidy had destroyed. I flew to Switzerland. Holden's voice was barely a whisper. When I found out about the pregnancy, your father's people told me you were in labor, told me the clinic location. I got there just in time for the delivery, and afterward, his voice broke. Afterward, a doctor came out and said the babies were premature but alive, that you'd signed away all parental rights, that you wanted nothing to do with them or me. I never signed anything, Fallon repeated. I was unconscious, grieving. My father handled everything. He told me it was better this way, less traumatic. So I took them. Holden continued. 3 babies who barely weighed 4 pounds each. I didn't know what I was doing. I was 26 years old and terrified, but I couldn't let them go to strangers. So I brought them home. You raised them alone? For 10 years. Yes, on a teacher's salary. Holden's laugh was bitter. It wasn't easy. There were times I didn't know how we'd make it. But they're incredible kids, Fallon. They're smart and kind and funny and... The nurse was back, her expression no longer kind. Out, both of you. Now. Mr. Rivers needs to rest. and this conversation is literally threatening his life. Fallon stood, but she couldn't stop looking at Holden, at the man who'd raised their children, who'd stepped up when he thought she'd stepped away, who'd sacrificed everything while she'd built an empire on grief. I'm so sorry. The words felt inadequate. For believing my father, for not looking harder, for not knowing. I'm sorry too, for believing you could abandon them. I should have known better. You loved them. I saw how you looked at those ultrasound photos. We were both lied to by someone we trusted. The nurse was physically ushering Fallon toward the door now. The boys, Holden called out. Don't tell them everything yet. They're too young to understand this level of betrayal. I won't, Fallon promised. But, Holden, I'm not leaving them again. I just found out they're alive. Nothing is keeping me away from them. She walked out before he could respond. In the waiting room, 3 boys looked up expectantly. Is Dad okay? He's going to be fine. Fallon sat beside them. But he needs to rest. His heart needs time to heal. Can we stay? Phoenix asked. I don't want to leave him. We can stay as long as you need to. Penelope appeared in the doorway, looking harassed and stressed. Miss Cassidy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. Fallon stood, moved away from the boys so they wouldn't hear. What kind of situation? Someone leaked the story. Twitter is exploding. Every major outlet is running with speculation about why you canceled events and went to Swedish Medical Center. And someone found the connection to Holden Rivers and his sons. How fast? It's already trending. Billionaire candidate secret children. The timeline matches your Switzerland trip 10 years ago. There are photos. Photos of what? Penelope held out her phone. On the screen was an image of Fallon in the hospital corridor with 3 children beside her. The resemblance was unmistakable. Someone took this? Here, at the hospital? A visitor with a cell phone. It was posted 40 minutes ago and has been shared 100,000 times already. Fallon felt the world tilt. This was her nightmare. Not the personal exposure, but the boys being dragged into media scrutiny they didn't ask for. In the waiting room, Sawyer's voice rose slightly. Mom, there are people taking pictures of us. Fallon turned. Through the windows, she could see people with cameras. Hospital staff, other visitors, all pointed at the waiting room where 3 children sat. Security, now. Get them out of here. Penelope was already on it, calling for hospital security, arranging for a private room, trying to contain disaster. But it was too late. The story was out, and there was no putting it back. The hospital administrator appeared within minutes, flustered and apologetic. Miss Cassidy, I'm so sorry. We're moving you and the children to a private family suite immediately. We'll make sure no one else has access. Fallon gathered the boys, shielding them with her body as they moved through corridors that suddenly felt like gauntlets. People stared. Phones came out. Whispers followed them like a wave. Phoenix grabbed her hand. His palm was sweaty, small, trembling slightly. Why are people looking at us like that? Because they're curious. People are always curious about things they don't understand. Do they know who you are? Beckett asked. Yes. Do they know who we are? Fallon looked down at him, at his serious, analytical face, at the intelligence in his eyes that was already working through implications. They're figuring it out. The private suite was nicer, quieter, with a door that locked and blinds that could be drawn. Penelope stood guard outside while Theodore paced, his phone pressed to his ear, doing damage control that probably couldn't be done. Fallon sat with the boys and tried to figure out what to say. How to explain that their entire lives were about to change because of a phone call they'd made in desperation. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully because it's important. 3 sets of eyes focused on her. Your dad and I loved each other very much. When I got pregnant with you 3, we were happy about it. Scared, but happy. But my father, your grandfather, he didn't want me to have you. Why not? Phoenix asked. Because he cared more about business and power than he cared about people, even family. Fallon chose her words carefully. He told me I had to choose between having you and keeping my job, my future, everything I'd worked for. What did you choose? Sawyer's voice was barely a whisper. I chose you. I went to Switzerland to have you safely, away from all the pressure and publicity. But when I woke up after you were born, my father told me you died. All 3 of you. He said there were complications and none of you survived. The boys stared at her. But we didn't die, Beckett said slowly. No, you didn't. But I believed him. I had no reason not to. He was my father. Why would he lie about something like that? To control you, Sawyer said. That's what people do when they want power over someone. They lie about big things so you'll do what they want. Fallon was constantly surprised by the wisdom of these children. Yes. Exactly that. What did he tell Dad? Phoenix asked. That I didn't want you. That I'd signed papers giving up all my rights as a parent. That I chose my career over all of you. Did you? Never. I mourned you for 10 years. Every single day. Every achievement I had. Every success. It was all built on top of grief for the children I thought I'd lost. Beckett was working through the timeline in his head. So Grandfather lied to you and to Dad. He made you think we were dead and made Dad think you abandoned us. Why? To keep me focused on the company. To make sure I became the person he wanted me to be instead of the person I wanted to be. That's really messed up, Phoenix said. Yes, it is. Are you mad at him? Sawyer asked. I'm furious. But he died 2 years ago, so I can't even confront him about it. They sat in silence for a moment, processing. These were 10-year-old children trying to understand adult cruelty on a scale most people never experience. What happens now? Beckett finally asked. With us? With you? With Dad? I don't know yet. But I know I want to be part of your lives if you'll let me. I know I can't make up for 10 years. I know your dad is the one who raised you, and he'll always be your primary parent. But I'd like to try to be your mom. The real kind. Not just biologically. What if we don't want that? Sawyer's question wasn't cruel, just honest. What if we're fine with just Dad? Then I'll accept that. Fallon's heart was breaking, but she kept her voice steady. I won't force myself into your lives, but I hope you'll give me a chance to show you that I didn't choose to leave you, that if I'd known you were alive, nothing could have kept me away. Phoenix was crying quietly. I called you because I was scared. I didn't know if you'd answer. I didn't know if you'd care. But Dad always kept your number in that emergency box, and I thought maybe it meant something. It meant everything. That call saved your dad's life, and it gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. Before anyone could respond, Theodore knocked and entered without waiting for permission. We need to make a statement. The media's camped outside the hospital. Your opponents are already calling for you to drop out. We need to control the narrative before it controls us. I'm not making any statements until I know Holden and the boys are okay. Fallon, every minute we wait, the story gets worse. Right now, it's speculation. In an hour, it'll be facts, and those facts won't be the ones we want out there. Then what do you suggest? A press conference. Tomorrow. You, Holden if he's able. And the boys. Full transparency. Explain what happened, expose your father's deception, and frame this as a story of family reunion rather than abandonment. Absolutely not. I'm not putting these children in front of cameras to serve my political career. It's not about your career anymore. It's about protecting them. If you don't control the story, someone else will. And their version won't be kind. Fallon looked at the boys. At Beckett's analytical face, Sawyer's cautious expression, Phoenix's tear-stained cheeks. What do you three think? We think you should ask Dad, Beckett said. He's the one who makes decisions about us. You're right. Fallon stood. Let me go talk to him. The nurses tried to stop her. Mr. Rivers needs rest. No visitors except immediate family. I am immediate family. I'm the mother of his children. They let her through. Holden was awake, staring at the ceiling, machines beeping steadily beside him. We need to talk about what happens next. He turned his head slowly. I've been thinking about that, about what this means. For them. For us. The media knows. Someone took photos. It's all over social media. My campaign manager wants to do a press conference tomorrow. Absolutely not. I won't let you use our children for political damage control. That's not what this is, isn't it? Holden's voice was weak but firm. You're running for governor. This is a scandal. 3 secret children you supposedly abandoned. Of course, your people want to spin it. I don't want to spin it. I want to tell the truth. The truth is complicated, Fallon. The truth is that we were both lied to, manipulated, kept apart. But the truth is also that I raised them and you didn't. That they know me and they don't know you. That showing up now, in the middle of a campaign, Looks convenient. You think I planned this? You think I wanted to find out my children were alive via voicemail while I'm running for office? No, but I think you're a politician now. And politicians think about optics and strategy and how to turn every situation to their advantage. I'm also a mother. Their mother, even if I didn't know it for 10 years. Holden closed his eyes. His heart monitor was starting to beep irregularly again. I can't do this right now. My heart literally can't handle this conversation. Just keep them safe. Keep them away from cameras and reporters and people who want to use them. Can you do that? Yes. And, Fallon, when this settles, when I'm out of here and thinking clearly, we're going to have to figure out custody, visitation, how this actually works. I know. Because they're my sons. I've raised them. And I won't let anyone, not even their biological mother, disrupt their lives for political gain. I'm not trying to disrupt anything. I'm trying to be part of something I should have been part of all along. A nurse appeared, her expression stern. Out. Now. His heart rate is spiking again. Fallon left. Walked back to the private suite where 3 boys waited. What did he say? Beckett asked. He said we need to keep you safe. Away from all the chaos. For how long? I don't know. As long as it takes. The rest of the afternoon passed in strange suspension. Penelope brought food. Theodore brought updates. The story was getting bigger. More outlets picking it up. Political opponents making statements. Supporters confused. The whole campaign in chaos. And through it all, 3 boys sat in a hospital suite with a woman they barely knew, trying to process that their entire understanding of their family was based on lies. Do you have pictures? Phoenix asked suddenly. Of when you were pregnant with us? Fallon pulled out her phone. She'd kept photos hidden in a locked folder. Photos from the pregnancy. Her and Holden, young and hopeful. Ultrasound images of 3 tiny shapes. That's you. Phoenix pointed to one of the babies on the ultrasound. I was the smallest. Dad told me. You were born at 32 weeks. 4 pounds, 3 ounces. The doctors weren't sure you'd make it. But I did. You did. All 3 of you did. You fought and survived and grew up to be these incredible people. Without you, Sawyer pointed out, not meanly, just factually, without me knowing about it, but not without me loving you. I loved you before you were born. I loved you every day I thought you were dead. And I love you now. How can you love people you don't know? Beckett's question was genuinely curious. Because you're my children. That doesn't go away just because we were kept apart. Dad loves you, Phoenix said quietly. He never talks about it, but I've seen pictures of you two. He kept them. In that box. And sometimes, when he thinks we're asleep, he looks at them. Fallon's heart broke a little more. Night fell. The boys were getting tired, restless. They wanted to see their father again. The nurses allowed a brief visit. 5 minutes. All 4 of them crowded into Holden's room. Hey, Dad, you look better. I feel better. Holden managed to smile for his sons. You guys doing okay? It's weird. People keep staring at us. And Mom, her people, they keep saying we need to make statements or do press conferences or stuff. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, Holden said firmly. You're kids, not political props. Fallon spoke from the doorway. I told them the same thing. Holden's eyes met hers. A long look that held 10 years of what-ifs and might-have-beens. Where are they staying tonight? With me. If that's okay. I have a penthouse with plenty of room. Security to keep reporters away. They'll be safe. I want them to be comfortable. Not just safe. I'll make sure they're both. After the hospital, Fallon drove 3 exhausted boys to her building. The doorman's eyes widened when he saw them. The resemblance to the photos that were all over social media was unmistakable. The penthouse was everything their small apartment wasn't. Enormous. Expensive. Impersonal. This is where you live. Sawyer's voice echoed in the huge space. Yes, it's really big. Too big for one person. She showed them to guest rooms. Found spare toothbrushes, oversized t-shirts that could work as pajamas. Watched them move through her space like visitors in a museum. Can we all sleep in the same room? Phoenix asked. We don't like being separated. Of course, they dragged blankets and pillows into one room. Created a nest on the floor. Fallon sat with them, this woman who was their mother but also a stranger. Tell us about our grandfather, the one who lied. Beckett's request surprised her. Richard Cassidy was one of the most powerful men in the tech industry. He built an empire from nothing. He was brilliant and ruthless and completely incapable of putting people before profit. Was he mean to you? Not in obvious ways. He never hit me or screamed, but he also never told me he was proud of me, never hugged me after my mother died, never saw me as anything other than his successor. That's sad, Phoenix said. Yes, it is. Do you miss him? Sawyer asked. I miss the father I wish he'd been. But the real him? No. Especially not now, knowing what he took from all of us. They fell asleep eventually. 3 boys in a pile of blankets, comfortable with each other in a way that spoke to years of being a team. Fallon sat watching them until Penelope called. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow at 2. Whether you're there or not, then cancel it. I can't. Your opponents have called their own press conference. They're going to destroy you if you don't get ahead of this. Penelope, I don't care about the campaign right now. You should. Because if you lose any platform to make the changes you care about. The education funding, the healthcare expansion, all of it goes away. And if I win by exploiting my children's trauma, if you win by telling the truth about a man who manipulated and controlled you, you show every person who's been lied to by powerful family members that they're not alone. Fallon was quiet for a long moment. Let me think about it. Let me talk to Holden when he's stronger. Let me talk to the boys when they've had time to process. You have until noon tomorrow to decide. After hanging up, Fallon stood at her window looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, people were talking about her, judging her, making assumptions about choices she never actually made. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. This is Holden. Borrowed a nurse's phone. However you handle this publicly, protect them first. That's all I ask. She texted back. I will. I promise. Another text. I believe you. And I'm sorry I didn't fight harder 10 years ago. I'm sorry I believed your father instead of trusting what I knew about you. Fallon's eyes filled with tears. We were both victims of a man who saw people as chess pieces. Let's not blame ourselves for his manipulation. A pause. Then, thank you for coming today. For being there for them. They needed that. I needed it too. More than you know. She fell asleep on the couch, phone in her hand, 3 children breathing steadily in the next room. The next morning arrived too fast. Fallon woke to find all 3 boys standing over her, staring. You snore, Phoenix announced. I do not. You do, Sawyer confirmed. It's okay though. Dad snores too. They made breakfast together. Or rather, Fallon attempted breakfast while 3 boys corrected her technique, her ingredient choices, her everything. Dad makes better pancakes, Beckett said diplomatically. Everyone makes better pancakes than me. I'm aware. They were eating when Theodore and Penelope arrived. We need a decision. The press conference is in 4 hours. Fallon looked at the boys, at 3 faces watching her curiously. Can I talk to you 3 about something? Honestly? They nodded. There are people who want me to do a big press conference today. To talk about what happened, about my father lying, about finding you, about all of it. My team thinks it's the only way to save my campaign, but I don't want to do anything that makes you uncomfortable or puts you in a position you don't want to be in. So, I'm asking, what do you think? Will we have to be there? Sawyer asked. Not if you don't want to be. Will people stop taking pictures of us if you do it? Eventually, maybe. When the story gets old, what happens if you don't do it? Beckett's analytical mind was working. My opponents will control the story. They'll say I abandoned you, that I'm using you for political gain now, that I'm unfit to be governor because I'm an unfit mother. Are you an unfit mother? Phoenix asked. I don't know yet. I'm pretty new at this. But, you want to be our mom? Like, really be our mom? Not just say it for cameras? More than anything. The boys looked at each other, had another one of their silent conversations. We looked up your policies last night. On your campaign website. Beckett spoke carefully. The education funding plan. The thing about increasing teacher salaries and getting more resources for schools. Dad would like that. All his teacher friends would like that. And the healthcare thing, Sawyer added, about making sure kids can see doctors even if their families don't have money. We couldn't always go to the doctor when we were little. Dad couldn't afford it sometimes. If you quit your campaign because people are mean, Phoenix said softly, You're teaching us to quit when things get hard. Dad always says we don't quit. We keep trying. Fallon stared at them, at 3 10-year-olds who were wiser than most adults she knew. So, you think I should do the press conference? We think you should tell the truth, Beckett said. Not to save your campaign, but because the truth matters. And because grandfather, the one who lied, he doesn't get to win just because he's dead. We'll be there with you, Sawyer said. If you want. We don't have to talk or anything, but we can be there so people know we're real, that we don't think you abandoned us. Are you sure? We talked about it last night, after you fell asleep. We decided that if our mom is brave enough to run for governor, we can be brave enough to stand next to her for one press conference. What about your dad? We'll ask him, but we think he'll say it's our choice. They did ask him. Drove back to the hospital where Holden was sitting up, looking stronger. The boys explained their decision. Holden listened carefully, then looked at Fallon. You'll protect them? Keep them off camera as much as possible? Make sure people know they're children, not political statements? Yes, all of that. And this is really what you 3 want? He asked his sons. All 3 nodded. Then I supported. But Fallon, if this goes wrong, if they get hurt by this in any way, I'll drop out immediately. The campaign doesn't matter more than they do. Good. Because for 10 years, they've been my entire world. I need to know they're yours too. They are. I promise you they are. The press conference was held in the Cassidy Tower, the same building where Fallon had learned her children were alive just 2 days ago. The room was packed. Journalists, cameras, lights. Penelope had tried to keep it small, but this was the story of the year. Everyone wanted in. Fallon stood at the podium. Theodore and Penelope flanked her. And behind the cameras, in a private viewing area she'd arranged, Holden sat with Beckett, Sawyer, and Phoenix. She could do this. She could tell the truth and protect her children, and maybe, just maybe, turn this nightmare into something that mattered. Thank you all for coming. I'm here to address the reports about my personal life that have emerged over the past 48 hours. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. The entire room held its breath. And Fallon Cassidy, billionaire, gubernatorial candidate, and newly discovered mother of triplets, began to tell a truth that had been buried for a decade. 10 years ago, I became pregnant with triplets. Fallon's voice was steady, but her hands gripped the podium so hard her knuckles were white. The father was a man named Holden Rivers, an elementary school teacher I met at a volunteer event, someone I fell deeply in love with despite, or maybe because of, the fact that he had no interest in my family's money or power. He loved me for who I was, not what I represented. She paused, letting that sink in. In the viewing room, she knew Holden was watching. The boys beside him. When I discovered I was pregnant, I was 28 years old. I was vice president of Cassidy Global. I was being groomed to take over my father's empire. And I was terrified. But I was also happy. Because Holden was happy. Because we were going to build a family together. A reporter shifted in her seat. Others leaned forward. My father, Richard Cassidy, saw things differently. He saw the pregnancy as a derailment of everything he'd built. Everything he'd planned for me. He gave me an ultimatum. Have the babies and give them up for adoption, then return to the company. Or keep them and lose everything. My inheritance, my position, my future. He also threatened to destroy Holden's teaching career, to make sure he never worked in education again. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I was young. I was scared. I believed I had no choice. So I agreed to go to Switzerland, to have the babies privately, away from media attention. My father told me he'd arrange for a good family to adopt them, that this was the best option for everyone. Fallon's voice cracked slightly. She took a breath. I went into labor at 32 weeks. The delivery was complicated, dangerous. I remember pain. I remember doctors shouting. I remember being sedated. And then I remember nothing for 2 days. The room was completely silent now. When I woke up, my father was sitting beside my hospital bed, and he told me that there had been complications, that all 3 babies had died, that none of them survived. Someone gasped. Fallon pushed forward. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my father. The doctors confirmed his story. Everyone had the same explanation. Complications. Premature birth. 3 babies, too fragile to make it. She looked directly into the cameras. I spent the next 10 years believing my children were dead. I mourned them every single day. Every business decision I made, every step toward power, every achievement. It was all built on top of grief so profound it nearly destroyed me. The only thing that kept me going was channeling that pain into ambition, into trying to make their deaths mean something. Fallon's hands were shaking now. What I didn't know, what I only discovered 2 days ago, was that my father had lied. The babies didn't die. They survived. And their father, Holden Rivers, took them home from that clinic believing I had willingly signed away all parental rights, believing I had chosen my career over them. The room erupted. Questions shouted from every direction. Fallon held up a hand. My father orchestrated an elaborate deception. He lied to me about their deaths. He lied to Holden about my abandonment. He kept us apart and let us both believe what he wanted us to believe. And he took that secret to his grave 2 years ago. Why? Someone shouted. Why would he do that? Because he valued control over love, legacy over family. Because in his mind, I was more valuable as a CEO than as a mother. Because he couldn't see past his own ambition to recognize that some things matter more than empire building. How did you find out they were alive? 2 days ago, Holden collapsed from a stress-induced heart attack. My son, Phoenix, found an old emergency number in a box of my things that Holden had kept. He called me, terrified, asking for help. That's how I discovered that the children I'd mourned for a decade were alive. The questions kept coming, rapid fire, overlapping. Have you met them? Yes. Do they know you're their mother? Yes. What's your relationship with Holden Rivers? We're co-parents. Nothing more right now. Are you dropping out of the race? Fallon paused. This was the moment, the choice that would define everything. I came here today planning to announce my withdrawal from the gubernatorial race. I thought that was the only way to prove to my children that they matter more than political ambition, more than my father's legacy, more than anything I could achieve in public office. She could see Theodore tense. Penelope leaned forward. But last night my sons, Beckett, Sawyer, and Phoenix, they asked me not to quit. Behind the cameras, she saw movement. The door to the viewing room opened. 3 boys walked out. Phoenix appeared at her side first, took her hand without hesitation. Sawyer followed, stood on her other side. Beckett came last, the most cautious, the most protective, but he came. The cameras went wild, flashes everywhere, but the boys stood steady. Phoenix leaned toward the microphone. His young voice carried across the silent room. Our dad taught us that people make mistakes, but what matters is what you do after. What you do to fix things. Sawyer spoke next. His voice was careful, but clear. Our mom, our birth mom, she didn't make the mistake. Her dad did. So she shouldn't lose her dreams because someone else lied. Beckett was last. He looked directly at the cameras. We talked about it. The 3 of us and Dad. We looked up her policies. The education stuff. The healthcare plans. Kids like us. Kids whose dads are teachers and don't have a lot of money, we need those things. So we decided she should keep running. Because helping people matters more than hiding. Fallon couldn't speak, could barely breathe. She looked down at 3 children who were giving her a gift she didn't deserve. Then Holden appeared. He shouldn't have been there. Doctor's orders were bed rest. But he walked slowly to the front of the room, his movements careful but determined. Our family is unconventional. His voice was quiet, but it carried. We've been lied to, kept apart, put through hell by someone who should have protected us. But we're also proof that the truth eventually comes out, that children are more resilient than we give them credit for, that families can be rebuilt even after devastating loss. He stood beside Fallon, not touching, but present. Fallon and I are not together. We have a decade of hurt between us that can't be erased overnight, but we are committed to co-parenting our children, to building a relationship based on honesty and their well-being. And I support her decision to continue her campaign because I've seen what she wants to do for this state. It aligns with the values I've been teaching our sons their entire lives. The questions exploded again, but Fallon barely heard them. She was looking at Holden, at the man who had every reason to hate her but was choosing to stand beside her anyway. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. We still have a lot to figure out. I know. The press conference lasted another 30 minutes. Questions about Richard Cassidy's deception, about the legal implications, about how this would affect the campaign, about custody arrangements, about everything. Finally, Penelope stepped forward. That's all the time we have today. Miss Cassidy will be releasing a more detailed statement in the coming days. Thank you. They were ushered out through a back entrance, away from cameras, into a private room where Fallon finally let herself break down. You didn't have to do that. She looked at the boys. You didn't have to put yourselves out there like that. Yes, we did. Beckett's voice was firm, because people were saying things that weren't true, and we're not going to let them. Besides, Phoenix added, you're our mom. We're supposed to have your back. That's how families work. Even families that just met 2 days ago? Fallon asked. Especially those, Sawyer said with his careful logic. They need the most help. Holden sat heavily in a chair. His face was pale. You should be in the hospital, Fallon said. Probably, but I couldn't let you do that alone. I wouldn't have been alone. The boys were with me. That's not what I meant. Their eyes met, held. Something passed between them that the boys noticed immediately. Are you two going to get back together? Phoenix asked with the bluntness of a 10-year-old. No, both adults said simultaneously. But you still love each other, Beckett observed. It's obvious. Love is complicated, Holden said carefully, especially when it's been hurt as badly as ours has. But you're trying, right? Sawyer pressed. You're going to try to fix it? We're trying to be good parents to you three. That's what we're focusing on. The boys didn't look convinced, but they dropped it. Over the next week, the story dominated every news cycle. Billionaire candidates' secret children, dead babies who weren't actually dead, a father's deception that spanned a decade. Public opinion was split. Some people saw Fallon as a victim of manipulation. Others saw her as a woman making excuses for abandonment. Some admired her for continuing the campaign. Others thought she should focus on her newly discovered children. The boys' lives changed overnight. They couldn't go back to their old school without being mobbed. They couldn't go to the park or the grocery store or anywhere public without recognition. Holden's apartment was besieged by reporters. He couldn't return to teaching. The stress was literally bad for his heart. So Fallon made a decision. Move in with me. Temporarily. Until this dies down. I have security, space, privacy. Holden resisted at first. His pride wouldn't let him accept help from the woman whose father had destroyed their lives. But the boys wanted it. They liked the big apartment, liked having their own rooms, liked the sense of safety that came with professional security keeping the world at bay. So Holden agreed. Temporarily. Living together was strange. They were CO parents, but also strangers. People who had loved each other desperately but now had to navigate shared space with a decade of pain between them. Fallon learned their routines, Saturday pancakes, Sunday movie marathons, bedtime stories that Holden did in different voices for each character. She learned that Beckett was allergic to strawberries, that Sawyer had nightmares about losing his father, that Phoenix still slept with a stuffed elephant Holden had given him as a baby. She learned that Holden was patient in ways she'd forgotten, that he saw teaching moments in everything, that he'd built a life of such intentional love that the boys had grown up secure, despite missing a mother. And Holden learned that Fallon had changed, that the driven, scared 28-year-old he'd known had become someone harder, but also more empathetic, that her policies weren't just political positioning, but genuine attempts to fix systems that had failed people like him. They had family therapy, a counselor who specialized in complex family dynamics. Phoenix, how do you feel about having a mother in your life now? Good, mostly. Sometimes I'm mad that I didn't have her before, but mostly good. Beckett, you seem more cautious. Talk about that. I just want to make sure she's really staying, that this isn't temporary until her campaign is over, because if she leaves again, even if it's not her fault, I don't think Phoenix could handle it. Sawyer, what about you? I'm waiting to see what happens. Dad always says actions matter more than words. So I'm watching what she does, not what she says. The therapist turned to the adults. Fallon, what are you most afraid of? That I'll never make up for the time I lost. That they'll always see me as the mother who wasn't there, instead of the mother who's trying now. Holden, that I'll have to share them. That sounds selfish, but they've been mine for 10 years. My whole world. And now I have to figure out how to make space for someone else. Do you resent Fallon? Sometimes, yes, even though I know intellectually that she was lied to, emotionally there. Still this part of me that's angry she wasn't there for the hard parts. The sleepless nights. The first steps. The first words. All of it. That's fair, the therapist said. Resentment is normal. What matters is what you do with it. The campaign continued. Fallon's polling numbers were erratic. Some days up, some days down, always dependent on how people felt about the secret children story. Her opponents attacked relentlessly. How can we trust someone who didn't know her own children were alive? What kind of mother loses her children and doesn't fight harder to find the truth? If she can be manipulated by her father, how will she stand up to special interests? Fallon absorbed the attacks, stayed focused, did events about education and healthcare and the issues that actually mattered. And everywhere she went, people asked about the boys. Some were kind, supportive, shared their own stories of family deception and complicated relationships. Others were cruel, accused her of using her children for sympathy votes, of being an unfit mother and therefore an unfit leader. Through it all, the boys were remarkable. They adjusted to their new school, made friends who liked them for who they were, not whose children they were, did their homework and played soccer and argued about movies like normal kids. But they also watched their mother navigate public scrutiny with a grace they were learning to emulate. One night, about 3 weeks after the press conference, Fallon found Phoenix crying in his room. "Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong? A kid at school said you're a bad mom, that you gave us away and only came back because it looked good for your campaign." Fallon sat on his bed, pulled him close. "Do you believe that?" "No, but it still hurt." "I know, and I'm sorry you have to hear things like that. I'm sorry that my life, my choices, even the choices that were made for me, affect you. It's not your fault. Some of it is. I could have dropped out of the race, kept you out of the spotlight, given you a normal life, but then you wouldn't be trying to help other kids, kids whose families need better schools and doctors they can afford. You sound like your brothers. They're right, though. You should keep running, even when people are mean. Why do you think that? Because Dad always says the right thing is usually the hard thing. And this seems really hard, so it's probably right." Fallon held her youngest son and marveled at his wisdom. That same week, Holden had his follow-up cardiology appointment. Fallon drove him, waited while he was examined. The doctor's report was cautiously optimistic. "Your heart function is improving. The lifestyle changes are helping, but you need to maintain low stress levels. No returning to full-time work yet. Continue the medication, and consider permanent changes to how you approach life balance." On the drive home, Holden was quiet. "What are you thinking?" Fallon asked. "That I can't teach right now. That I don't know when I'll be able to go back. That I've defined myself by that job for 10 years, and without it, I don't know who I am. You're their father. That's who you are." Being their father was always tied to being a teacher, to providing for them, to showing them that work you love matters. And now, I can't do that. You're showing them something more important, that health matters, that it's okay to accept help, that strength isn't just pushing through everything alone. Holden glanced at her. "When did you get so wise?" "Probably around the time I discovered my entire life was based on lies. Tends to give you perspective." They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Holden spoke again. "I'm sorry I didn't fight harder for you 10 years ago. I'm sorry I believed your father instead of trusting what I knew about you in my gut. I'm sorry I let fear control me, that I didn't tell my father to go to hell and choose you and the babies regardless of the consequences. We were both young, both manipulated by someone who was very good at manipulation. Doesn't make it hurt less. No, it doesn't." Another pause. "Fallon, can I ask you something? Anything. If we hadn't been lied to, if we'd raised them together from the beginning, do you think we would have made it? As a couple?" Fallon considered the question seriously. "I don't know. We were very young, very different. You wanted a simple life built on love and teaching. I wanted to prove I was more than my father's daughter. Those things might have conflicted eventually anyway, but we loved each other. We did. Deeply. Do you still love me?" Fallon's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I love the man you were. I'm learning to know the man you've become. Ask me again in a few months. Fair enough. What about you? I never stopped loving you, even when I thought you'd abandoned us. Even when I was angry and hurt and raising 3 babies alone, some part of me always loved you. That's inconvenient. Very. They both laughed. A real laugh. The first one they'd shared in a decade. The boys noticed the shift. The way their parents were more comfortable around each other, less careful, more willing to be in the same room without tension crackling. "They're totally getting back together," Phoenix announced one evening. "Don't jinx it," Sawyer warned. "I'm just saying what we're all thinking." "Dad's scared," Beckett observed. "He doesn't want to get hurt again." "Mom's scared too," Phoenix added. "She doesn't think she deserves a second chance." "So what do we do?" Sawyer asked. "Give them time. Help them see they're good together. Be obvious about wanting them to be a family." The campaign entered its final weeks. Polls showed Fallon in a dead heat with her opponent. The debates were brutal. Her opponent, a career politician named Marcus Thornton, went after her relentlessly. "Miss Cassidy, you claim you didn't know your children were alive for 10 years. How can voters trust your judgment when you failed to see through your own father's deception? My father was a master manipulator. He deceived doctors, lawyers, everyone involved. I was grieving and trusting someone I believed had my best interests at heart. I've learned from that. I'll never be that naive again. But isn't it convenient that these children appeared just as your campaign needed a humanizing story? My children didn't appear. They've been alive and thriving thanks to their father's dedication. I appeared in their lives. And if you think any mother would choose to miss 10 years of her children's lives for political gain, you fundamentally misunderstand both motherhood and humanity." The audience erupted in applause. "Mr. Thornton," Fallon continued, "you've spent this entire campaign attacking my personal life while offering no substantive policy solutions. Let's talk about education funding. You voted against increased teacher salaries 3 times. I'm proposing a 20% increase because teachers, like my children, his father, deserve to be compensated fairly for the critical work they do." The moderator tried to regain control, but Fallon was on a roll. "Let's talk about healthcare access. You oppose the expansion of children's health coverage. I've watched my children's father struggle to afford their medical care on a teacher's salary. No parent should have to choose between their child's health and keeping the lights on." She looked directly at the camera. "I'm not running because I have a perfect life or a perfect family. I'm running because I understand what it's like when systems fail you, when powerful people prioritize their interests over your well-being, when you have to fight for every scrap of stability, and I'm committed to fixing those systems so fewer families have to struggle the way mine has." The debate ended with Fallon ahead in post-debate polls. At home, the boys had watched with Holden. "Mom destroyed him," Beckett said with satisfaction. "Language," Holden corrected automatically. "But yes, she was very effective. Did you see her face when he called us convenient?" Phoenix was indignant. "Like we're some kind of political stunt. That's what opponents do. They twist things to make them sound worse than they are. Well, it's mean." "Yes, it is." When Fallon got home that night, 3 boys were still awake despite it being past bedtime. "We saw the debate," Sawyer announced. "You were amazing. You should be asleep. We were too excited to sleep. You made that guy look silly. He made himself look silly by attacking instead of addressing real issues." "Are you going to win?" Phoenix asked. "I don't know. The polls are close. It could go either way." "We hope you win," Beckett said. "Not because you're our mom, but because your ideas are actually good. That might be the best compliment I've ever received." Holden appeared in the doorway. "All right, boys, bed. Now. Your mom needs rest too." They grumbled, but complied. Hugs all around. Goodnight routines that now included Fallon. When they were alone, Holden poured 2 glasses of wine. To surviving debates and fatherhood and unexpected reunions. They clinked glasses. "You really were excellent tonight," Holden said. "I was proud of you." "The boys were proud of you." "Thank you. That means more than you know." "Fallon, I've been thinking about us. What happens after the election, regardless of whether you win or lose? What about us? We can't live in limbo forever. This temporary arrangement. We need to figure out what we're actually doing. I know. The boys want us to be together. As a couple. A real family. I know that too. What do you want?" Holden met her eyes. "I want what we should have had 10 years ago. A partnership. A life built together. But I'm terrified of wanting it. Because last time I trusted this, it was destroyed. I can't promise it won't be destroyed again. Life doesn't come with guarantees, but I can promise I'll fight for it this time. I won't let fear or ambition or anything else come between us and the family we should have been. He set down his wine glass, moved closer. If we do this, if we really try this, it has to be for the right reasons. Not for the boys, not for appearances, but because we genuinely want each other. I do want you. I want the life we could have. I want to make up for lost time. I want to build something real. Their faces were inches apart. I'm going to kiss you now, Holden said softly. If you don't want that, speak now. Fallon answered by closing the distance between them. The kiss was tentative at first, careful, then deeper. A decade of longing and loss and love that had survived everything poured into it. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Well, Holden managed. That was worth waiting 10 years for. Almost. They both laughed. From the hallway, 3 boys were definitely not asleep, and definitely celebrating silently. The final week of the campaign was a blur. Events, rallies, last-minute canvassing, every spare moment spent trying to reach undecided voters. Fallon brought the boys to some events. Let them see democracy in action. Let voters see that she was a mother now, learning and trying and committed. Election day arrived with cold November rain. Fallon voted early with Holden and the boys. The photo of all 5 of them at the polling place went viral. A family, unconventional and new, but unmistakably real. That evening, they gathered at campaign headquarters. The boys insisted on being there despite it potentially being a long night. Returns started coming in around 8. Early results were close. Too close to call. By 9, Fallon was ahead by a slim margin in urban areas. Behind in rural counties. By 10, it was still anyone's race. The boys were fighting sleep. Phoenix had curled up in Holden's lap. Sawyer and Beckett played cards to stay awake. Fallon paced, checked her phone, tried not to obsess over every update. Holden caught her hand as she passed. Whatever happens tonight, you ran an incredible campaign. You stood up after being knocked down. You told the truth when lying would have been easier. That matters more than winning. If I lose the ability to make the changes I promised. You'll find other ways. People who want to make a difference always do. At 11:30, a major news outlet called The Race. Fallon Cassidy wins gubernatorial election by narrow margin. The room erupted. Cheers. Tears. Celebration. Fallon stood frozen for a moment. She'd won. Despite everything. Despite the scandal and the attacks and the impossible situation. She'd won. The boys were suddenly fully awake, jumping around, shouting. Mom won. Mom's the governor. Holden pulled her into his arms. You did it. We did it. All of us. This was never just my campaign. The victory speech was brief. Fallon thanked her supporters, her staff, the voters who'd believed in her despite the chaos. But most of all, she thanked 3 boys who'd taught her what really mattered. I started this campaign believing I understood families because I'd lost one. Now I understand families because I found one. Because 3 remarkable children gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. Because their father showed me what real sacrifice and love look like. Because all of us chose each other, imperfectly and messily and honestly. Phoenix, Sawyer, and Beckett joined her on stage. Holden stood slightly behind, not quite part of the official photo, but undeniably part of the family. The image of the new governor with her children became iconic, a symbol of second chances, of families that don't fit traditional molds, of truth surviving deception. 6 months into Fallon's term as governor, life had found a rhythm. She worked insane hours, but made time for Saturday pancakes. Never missed a school event. Had dinner with the boys every night she was in the city. Holden returned to teaching part-time. His heart was stronger, his stress levels manageable. He'd learned to accept help and to prioritize health over pride. The boys thrived, adjusted to their new reality, split time between their mom's political world and their dad's normal one. And Fallon and Holden were officially together, not married yet, taking it slow, but building something real. One evening, Fallon found herself standing in front of her father's grave for the first time since discovering his deception. The boys had asked to come, wanted to see the grandfather they'd never met. Why did he do it? Phoenix asked, why lie about something so big? Because he thought he knew what was best, and he confused control with love. Do you forgive him? Sawyer's question was direct. I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't something you do once. It's something you choose every day. I don't think I can forgive him, Beckett said. He took 10 years from all of us. You don't have to. Forgiveness is personal. What matters is that you don't let his choices define your life. Holden stood back, letting Fallon have this moment with the boys. On the drive home, Phoenix asked the question they'd all been thinking. Are you and Dad getting married? Eventually. Maybe. We're taking things one day at a time. But you love each other. Very much. Then why wait? Because we did things backwards the first time. Fell in love too fast. Made big decisions without thinking through consequences. This time, we're being intentional. That's very adult of you, Beckett observed. Thank you. I think that weekend was Fallon's first major legislation signing. The education funding bill she'd campaigned on. Increased teacher salaries, free breakfast and lunch for all public school students, expanded arts programs. Holden stood beside her as she signed it into law. This is for every teacher who does the work of 10 people for the pay of 1. For every child who can't focus in class because they're hungry. For every parent who wants their child to have opportunities they didn't. This is for the families who struggle and the communities that support them. She looked at Holden. This is for the men who raised our children alone on a teacher's salary, and never once made them feel like they were missing anything. You showed me what dedication looks like, what prioritizing people over profit means. This legislation is my attempt to honor that. The photo from that day, Fallon and Holden with the boys between them, hung in her office. A year after the election, they got married. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. The boys as best men, all 3 of them. Fallon wore a simple dress. Holden wore a suit the boys helped him pick out. The vows were honest. I promise to choose you every day. To never let fear or ambition come between us. To build the life we should have had with the wisdom of knowing what we almost lost. I promise to trust you. To believe in us. To raise our children together and support your dreams while building ours. To never let anyone, living or dead, tell us what our family should look like. When they kissed, the boys cheered louder than anyone. 2 years into her term, Fallon was approached about running for higher office. The National Party wanted her story. The single mother who'd overcome deception. The governor who was changing education and health care. The candidate who could win. She came home and discussed it with Holden and the boys. What do you think? Beckett spoke first. Are you asking because you want to do it, or because you think you should? Both. I think I could do a lot of good. But I also know it would mean more time away. More scrutiny. More pressure on all of you. We can handle it, Sawyer said. We've handled everything else. But do you want to handle it? That's the question. Phoenix looked at his parents. I think you should do what makes you happy. You spent a lot of years doing what grandfather wanted, then a lot of years trying to make up for lost time. Maybe now you should just do what feels right. Holden took her hand. Whatever you decide, we're with you. But make the choice for you, not for us or for some idea of what you should do. Fallon thought about it for weeks. In the end, she declined. My statement read simply, I have work to finish here. A state to serve. A family to raise. Children who need me present, not campaigning. Maybe someday I'll be ready for a national stage. But right now, I'm exactly where I need to be. The decision was both celebrated and criticized. Some called it wise. Others called it a missed opportunity. Fallon didn't care. She'd learned that other people's opinions mattered far less than her own peace and her family's well-being. On a random Tuesday evening, 5 years after Phoenix's desperate phone call, the family sat around the dinner table arguing about something completely trivial. Beckett insisted that pineapple on pizza was an abomination. Phoenix defended it passionately. Sawyer tried to mediate while secretly agreeing with Beckett. Holden and Fallon watched their 15-year-old sons debate with the intensity of Supreme Court justices and felt overwhelming gratitude. This was what mattered. Not power or legacy or empire. This, normal family dinners where the biggest conflict was pizza toppings. Later, after the boys were in their rooms, Holden and Fallon sat on their balcony overlooking the city. Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if Phoenix hadn't found that number? Holden asked. All the time. You might have died. I'd still think they were dead. We'd all be living half-lives. One desperate phone call changed everything. Sometimes I'm angry it took that long. 10 years we'll never get back. I know. But dwelling on the lost time steals from the time we have now. When did you get so wise? probably around the time 3 teenagers started outsmarting me on a regular basis. They laughed together, comfortable, easy, the way only people who've survived everything and chosen each other anyway can be. In his room, Phoenix pulled out an old box from his closet, the one that had started everything. Inside were the items his father had kept, photos of Holden and Fallon when they were young and in love, letters never sent, and the emergency number on a worn piece of paper. He'd kept it, a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help from someone who isn't supposed to exist. That a single choice, a desperate call, a moment of faith in the face of fear can change everything. The next morning, Fallon woke to find all 3 boys in her and Holden's room. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "We're fine," Sawyer assured her. "We just wanted to say something." Beckett spoke next. "We've been talking about everything that happened, about grandfather and the lies and all of it." "And?" Fallon sat up, concerned. "And we wanted you to know that we're glad it happened the way it did." Phoenix finished. Not the lying part, but the finding each other part. Because maybe if we'd grown up normally we wouldn't appreciate this as much. We wouldn't understand how special it is. "You're saying you're grateful for trauma?" Holden asked, concerned from a parenting perspective. "We're saying we're grateful for second chances. That sometimes the hardest paths lead to the best destinations. That our family is weird and complicated and built on really messed up circumstances. But it's ours and we love it." Fallon pulled all 3 boys into bed with her and Holden. A pile of humans who'd found each other against impossible odds. "I love you 3 more than I ever thought it was possible to love anyone." "We know," they said in unison. And they did know, because she showed them every single day, through presence and sacrifice and choosing them over and over again. The story could have ended in tragedy. A father's heart attack, children orphaned, a woman living with grief and lies forever. Instead it ended with choice. Phoenix choosing to make a call that terrified him. Fallon choosing truth over image. Holden choosing to trust again despite every reason not to. 3 boys choosing to forgive and include and believe in second chances. A family choosing each other repeatedly, intentionally, fiercely. Because that's what love is. Not the easy affection of people who've never been tested, but the hard-won devotion of people who've survived the worst and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. 10 years after that first desperate phone call, Fallon stood at another podium. Her second gubernatorial inauguration. But this time, she wasn't alone. Holden stood beside her. Official first gentleman. 3 young men, nearly adults now, sat in the front row. Beckett headed to college in the fall. Sawyer planning to study education like his father. Phoenix already an accomplished artist with a gallery show scheduled. My first term was about proving I could lead despite an unconventional path to this office. This second term is about deepening that commitment to education, to healthcare, to families in all their forms. She looked at her family. I was told once that I had to choose between power and love, between achievement and family, between who I was expected to be and who I wanted to be. I've learned that was a false choice, that the real power is in choosing both. In being fully yourself in every role, in refusing to accept that success requires sacrificing the things that matter most. After the ceremony, the family gathered for photos, official ones, polished and perfect for the press, and unofficial ones, goofy faces and rabbit ears and the kind of authentic joy that can't be staged. That evening, back at the governor's mansion that was now truly a family home, Fallon found the old ultrasound photo. 3 tiny shapes that became 3 remarkable humans. She'd carried it in her wallet for 10 years, believing it was all she had left of her children. Now those children were downstairs arguing about video games and raiding the kitchen and living loud, messy, beautiful lives. Holden appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" "I was just thinking about that day in Switzerland, waking up to the lie, how it shaped everything after. Regrets? About being lied to?" "Yes, about how it turned out. Not anymore." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "We built something good from something terrible. We did." That night, Fallon updated her official biography, the one that would be in history books and official records. Previous versions had glossed over the personal, focused on achievements and policy. This one told the truth. Governor Fallon Cassidy Rivers, mother to triplets Beckett, Sawyer, and Phoenix, wife to Holden Rivers, daughter of Richard Cassidy, whose deception taught her that truth matters more than image, that family matters more than legacy, and that the bravest thing any of us can do is choose love even after it's been weaponized against us. She showed it to Holden. You're really putting that in official documents? It's the truth. And I'm done pretending that my personal story isn't relevant to my public service. One informs the other. Your father would hate it. Good. He doesn't get to control my narrative anymore. None of us do. We get to tell our own story. And what a story it was. Not a fairy tale. Not a perfect romance. Not a simple redemption arc. But a true story about real people making hard choices and surviving impossible circumstances and building a family from the wreckage of lies. A story about a single phone call that changed 5 lives. A story about children who were told their mother didn't want them learning she'd mourned them for a decade. A story about a father who raised triplets alone, discovering he'd been lied to about abandonment. A story about a woman who channeled grief into power, discovering that the real power was in the family she thought she'd lost. A story about second chances and hard-won trust and love that survived everything thrown at it. If you believe that truth always wins in the end, share this story. If you believe that families can be rebuilt from devastating loss, share this story. If you believe that the lies meant to break us can ultimately make us stronger, share this story. And if you've ever been told you have to choose between different parts of yourself, between ambition and love, between who you're expected to be and who you want to be, remember this. The choice is false. You can be fully yourself in every role. You can build power and build family. You can achieve great things and love deeply. It won't be easy. It will require sacrifice and compromise and constant intentional effort. But it's possible. Fallon Cassidy Rivers proved it. Holden Rivers proved it. And 3 boys who made a desperate phone call proved it. Sometimes the family we're meant to have is the one we fight hardest to build. Sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that survive the worst betrayals. And sometimes a single moment of courage, a child calling a mother he's never met, can rewrite everything we thought we knew about family, forgiveness, and the power of truth. Drop a like if this story moved you. Subscribe for more stories about real people making impossible choices. And comment below telling me what you would have done in Fallon's position. Would you have continued the campaign? Or would you have walked away from everything to focus on your newly discovered children? I read every comment, and I believe your stories matter just as much as the ones I tell. Until next time, remember that it's never too late to choose love, to tell the truth, to rebuild what was broken, and to believe that families, like hearts, can heal from even the most devastating wounds. This is Dr. Phillips, reminding you that every ending is also a beginning, and every phone call has the power to change everything.